Hi guys, George here from Zero Period Productions, and today we're taking a look at ESO Markarth, the upcoming DLC for the Elder Scrolls Online. ESO Markarth will be the final installment in this year's season of content, the Dark Heart of Skyrim, which started earlier this year with the Harrowstorm Dungeon Pack, the Greymoor expansion back in May, and the Stonethorn Dungeon Pack which released in August. The Markarth DLC will tie all of these adventures together, and bring a resolution to this year-long story arc. Prior to the launch of the Greymoor expansion back in May, I made a couple different videos showing off the new zone and its locations. One video of Solitude and another of Western Skyrim as a whole. Today's video will be similar to that and acts as a bit of a tour and overview of what you can expect to see when the DLC drops. I haven't played through the DLC's quests at all, and I do want to go in blind when it releases. I'm recording this video on the game's playtest server, which is available to all PC players who own ESO. As you might have guessed from the DLC's name, ESO Markarth will heavily feature the dwarven city of Markarth. But across this DLC, we will also see the rest of the Reach and new sections of Blackreach as well. When we ventured to Solitude earlier this year, in the Elder Scrolls Online Greymoor, we found ourselves in a familiar city, and one criticism I saw when showing off Solitude was the lack of change between ESO's version and Skyrim's version. That being said, Markarth as it appears in the Elder Scrolls Online is not quite the city that you'll remember from your adventures in the 4th era. During the time of ESO, nearly 1,000 years before the events of the Elder Scrolls V, the Reachmen, the predecessors to the Forsworn, rule not only Markarth, but all of the Reach. For this reason, the Reach is said to be a deadly and tribal land, with talk of bloodthirsty warriors and cunning witches. And while there are plenty of Reachmen who would love nothing more than to kill you just for entering their lands, you will find that not all Reachmen are as savage as you might expect. Now before we begin our tour in ESO, let's first talk a little bit about Markarth's past. Dating back to the First Era, Markarth was originally known as Nuchan-Zel, one of many dwarven cities that dotted Skyrim's landscape. Built into a large stone crag, the city was designed around the cliffs and waterfall, making for a very unique city for the Dwemer. After the fall of the Dwemer, the Nords came to inhabit Markarth for some time, and ruled it under the Empire's jurisdiction, until the events of ESO during the Second Era, when it was overrun by the Reachmen, turning Markarth into an independent city-state under their control. Markarth's geographical location and outer defenses make for a nearly impenetrable city, and whoever controls the city easily controls the Reach. During the time of ESO, Markarth serves as a seat of Reachmen power, with several clans having come together and formed an uneasy alliance of sorts. In some ways, it reminds me of the wildlings from Game of Thrones coming together at Hardhome, an uneasy alliance between clans that would usually be at war with one another. The Reachmen of the Second Era have a reason for this alliance, but I won't be getting into any spoilers for the DLC in this video. Approaching the city, you'll be met with several tribal markings, including bones, banners, and rudimentary blockades. The winding path up to the city walls makes for a dangerous approach for any attackers, giving those defending Markarth from a potential siege a notable advantage. Upon entering the city itself, there are two things that you'll immediately notice. The first being the much more tribal and primal look to the city, lots of bones, war paint, and wreaths decorating the entire city, showing that even when living in a city, the Reachmen maintain their culture and aesthetic. Second, you'll notice that the city is much less run down, and given that the Elder Scrolls Online is 1,000 years before the events of Skyrim, it makes sense. I really liked the state of the city in ESO, seeing Markarth before it has really started to deteriorate more. One can assume that much of this deterioration by the 4th Era came from constant attacks and sieges, with the Reachmen and the Nords trading the city between themselves numerous times in the coming centuries. In Skyrim's version of Markarth, we see a series of market stalls immediately upon entering the city, but have no such sight in ESO's version. Instead, markets and merchants are located throughout the city, but the building that eventually becomes Arnleif and Sons still acts as a general store. Same goes for the Silverblood Inn, which while it goes by a different name, still acts as an inn. I mean hey, Reachmen got a drink too, right? To really show that Markarth during the Second Era isn't nearly as worn down, we simply need to take a look at the Warrens, which during this time serves as a crafting hub, and home to associated merchants and vendors as well. It's weird to see an area that we've known for so long as a slum before it becomes that way, and instead see it as a cozy, well-kept area. You will also see several other areas of the city that are absent of rubble and decay, such as the entrance to what becomes Sidna Mine, which instead serves as the guild trader hub in the city. Markarth is home to many houses, and I can't help but wonder how much of an adjustment period there must have been for some of the Reachmen to live in more traditional abodes after living a life in the untamed wilds. Most of these houses are locked, so you will have to break into them in order to explore them at all. One small Easter egg in Markarth is in what becomes the House of Horrors Daedric quest in Skyrim. While the house is locked and occupied by inhabitants in ESO, you are able to pick the lock and sneak in. Should you make your way to the furnished basement, you'll find a mace and skull sitting on a table in the final room. A small nod to Skyrim's quest, and a fun one to find. Looking at other familiar locations and comparing Skyrim's versions to Markarth's in ESO, we have the Shrine of Talos, which serves as a simple storage cellar, and the Shrine of Dibella, one of the highest points in the city, which instead serves as the Shrine of the Huntfather, better known to many as Hircine, the Daedric Prince. You won't be able to venture very far into the shrine, but Hircine is involved in a couple points of the DLC, including the new solo arena, Vateshran Hollows. This is the first new solo arena added to the game in years, since the Orsinium DLC back in 2015. Another thing to note is the presence of the Fighters and Mages Guild in the city, which is largely due to the fact that every major city in ESO plays home to these guilds, but it can easily be explained within the lore as well. With Markarth as an independent city-state and allowing outsiders to enter the city, it would only make sense for the guilds to set up shop and hopefully capitalize from them. Without any ongoing war between the Nords and the Reachmen, or the Empire and the Reachmen, what harm is there in the guilds operating out of the city? Moving on to Understone Keep, we once again see a distinct lack of ruin and decay. In the 4th era, we're immediately greeted by rocks and debris, and walk through a bit more of a cave-type entrance in order to reach the entryway to Nuchan Zel's ruins. But during the 2nd era, the original structure and tunnel is entirely intact. The entrance to the lower parts of Nuchan Zel seem inaccessible at the moment, but that likely means it'll be a quest area during the DLC. What becomes the Hall of the Dead is completely sealed off, so we can only assume that the structure within is not of any notable use to the Reachmen. The rest of the keep is largely as you'll remember it from Skyrim, but with Reachmen decorations, just like the rest of the city. One thing I really like about this version of Markarth is the added greenery, which helps to give a little bit more color to a very gray-toned location. This is really the first time that we've had Reachmen as a set of NPCs that we can interact with and have quests with, rather than simply being an enemy found throughout various regions in the game. It gives us a chance to explore their culture a bit more, and see a different side of them. The structure and layout of the city is nearly identical to that of Skyrim's version, which in this case makes a lot of sense. Markarth is a Dwemer city and ruin that has been repurposed and inhabited by whoever is able to hold it. The existing buildings aren't being torn down to make way for new ones. The city simply exists as it is until war causes any destruction or damage. The one criticism I have of this Markarth is that it does feel a little bit empty and blocked off. Compared to some of the other cities in ESO, it feels like you're a little bit more limited in which areas you can access and explore. Part of this can probably be chalked up to its state as a DLC city. ESO's zone DLCs are usually smaller than the areas we get in expansions, so it wouldn't be fair to compare ESO's Markarth to ESO's Solitude 1-to-1, as Solitude is part of the Greymoor expansion. That being said, while this DLC is named the Elder Scrolls Online Markarth, the city itself is not the only location. It is only one of several areas that you'll explore and quest in throughout this DLC. Given that this DLC gives us both the Reachhold in its entirety, new Blackreach sections, and a brand new solo arena, this is one of the largest zone DLCs we'll have ever had for ESO. Building on that point, while this video is mostly about the city, I did take a chance to explore a bit of the Reach overall, and really enjoyed what I saw. While it is inaccessible for lore reasons, I did manage to spot Skyhaven Temple as I walked around, and got to see several other familiar locations as well, such as Volthoom, Deepfolk Crossing, Red Eagle Redoubt, and Karthwasten. You can even walk from the Reach to Western Skyrim, which always helps to make the different zones feel more interconnected as part of the larger world. The new Blackreach caverns under the Reach are absolutely beautiful. They feel a little bit more claustrophobic than the ones we see in the Greymoor expansion, and are beautifully designed and lit, from the mushroom forests to the massive dwarven library. All in all, I think this will be a very fun DLC to explore. The Elder Scrolls Online Markarth releases on November 2nd for PC, Mac, and Stadia, and November 10th for consoles. I'll be playing through the DLC on its release date over on twitch.tv/0periodproductions. I'm really looking forward to seeing how the team wraps up this year's story arc, and to delve even more into the dark heart of Skyrim. Thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed this first look at the next ESO DLC. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like and subscribe, and why not check out my Patreon, which helps make it possible for me to continue to do YouTube and Twitch full time. I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye.